West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goët.
Chuck, it's always good to be with you.
Look, I want to get into the debt ceiling. I want to get into all this stuff, but we got some developments overnight with this classified documents. An FBI search. White House said it was coordinated with the FBI, but we now had an FBI search into former President Trump. Now we have an FBI search into President Biden's residence. What's your assessment of how the president has handled this situation?
Well, I mean, it's just hard to believe that in the United States of America we have a former president and a current president. They're basically in the same situation. How does this happen? You know, only thing I can tell you, Chuck, is when I go into the SCIF with the secured documents, they always ask, are you clean when you walk out? They want to make sure you're not carrying anything out. You know, and it might be a mistake. You might just put it in your other papers, but you double check right there. So that, to be held accountable and responsible is what we all are. And to put those in unsecured spaces is irresponsible.
Do you see similarities, or do you see more differences in how President Trump versus how President Biden handled it?
I'm not going to make that decision, but I think that Merrick Garland did the right thing by putting a special counsel.
You do.
And I think that we should wait until the special counsel rather than making this a political circus. Let them find out the facts. What was one more damaging? Are they both about the same? Did not cause any problem? Or is one more reckless and irresponsible than the other? I can't answer that question, but I think the special counsel will do a better job than the politicians and the political circus that is going to follow.
President Biden said he had no regrets in how he handled this. Do you have any advice for him on how he should handle this?
Oh, I think he should have a lot of regrets. Yeah, I would think that. I said whoever's responsible. I mean, if I hold people accountable, and I use whether it be my chief of staff or my staff that we're doing this, and I'm looking at, then I'm going to hold someone accountable. But basically, the buck stops with me.
So you think he should be out there and look? I messed up. Maybe I didn't do it. Just say it. Just fall on your sword here.
We're all human. Yeah. We make mistakes. I can tell you, I don't think anyone intended. He sure didn't intend for it to fall in the wrong hands and use it against our country. I know they didn't intend that to happen. Could it have happened? I don't know. And yeah, you just might as well say, listen, it's irresponsible. It was something we should have had a better check and balance on.
Now, former President Trump defied a subpoena. So in that sense, the way each has handled it is different. Do you acknowledge that?
Absolutely, much different than the other. One's saying, okay, I hope I didn't make any mistakes. Right. I hope no one was compromised. I hope we didn't hurt our country. And the other one says, no, I know it didn't. Believe me. Well, you know what? What they said, verify, you have to verify.
Trust but verify.
Trust but verify. Let's find out. And that's what the special counsel's about.
And that's what you want here, both special counsels to sort of resolve this.
First of all, every one of us in our life have to be held accountable and responsible for our actions.
Yeah.
That's, people want accountability. And they want basically, when you're held accountable, are you responsible or not? Mm-hmm. If you are, can you fix that? Did you make a mistake? Fine. And
that's what you think. The president needs to get out there and just get in front of
Cicero said to err is human. You're a human being. You're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Did you intend to make it? Did you intend to harm somebody? Did you intend to basically do an irresponsible thing? I don't think. Hopefully, neither one of them did.
Right.
But they sure turned out to be irresponsible.
Let's talk about the debt ceiling. As always, you're trying to find a compromise middle ground.
Yep.
I know your instinct here. But why should Republicans get the benefit of the doubt on the debt ceiling here, considering that that they're sort of manufacturing a crisis that's a bit unnecessary right now?
Well, first of all, if one side thinks that the other one's more responsible for the debt, at $31.4 trillion, that is totally not accurate, and it's deceptive. We're all responsible. We got a $31.4 trillion debt. It's a runaway debt, and no one's holding themselves accountable. And basically, I think you said it, use the budget process. I've been here 12 years. We haven't had a budget yet.
Yeah, that's what I don't get.
We
here.
haven't had a budget yet.
And that's what I question. You want to do this special committee here. I'm sitting here going, why add more bureaucracy? We have a budget committee. We have 2 budget committees. We have a joint committee on taxation. We have all these different committees that have already been created to deal with this process. Why can't we use the congressional bureaucracy that exists? We
have 12 appropriations committee that's supposed to do their job. Why don't you basically put a time certain on what you can do and what you can't do and when you do it? I can't speak for that. I was a former governor of the state of West Virginia.
Right.
I was responsible for a balanced budget amendment and basically staying within the realms of my Constitution. So, I met every week. Every week, like clockwork, they walk in my office on a Tuesday or Wednesday and sit down and go over it. You're either going to have to make some cuts now, make some adjustments now, so we can end the year with a balanced budget or surplus. There's nothing that holds us accountable. Nothing at all. We can say, we're going to do it. As I've said before, 12 years, haven't had a budget. That's ridiculous.
So you want to do this sort of, that you and Senator Romney, to have committee that deals with the trust fund issues. But right now, neither party wants to touch that. I mean, in that sense, Donald Trump came out, and certainly Democrats, nobody wants to touch Social Security or Medicare.
Well, first of all...
So how do you separate those two out and deal with our fiscal...
Why would you scare the bejesus out of people that basically, let's say in West Virginia, I got 60% of my population, that's all they have is Medicare and Social Security. You think I'm going to go down that path and put them in jeopardy? No. But there are so much other things that basically wasteful spending that can be corralled in without scaring the bejesus, depending on what political side you're on.
Let me ask you about wasteful spending, because one of the 3 most hypocritical words I hear are waste, fraud, and abuse. Right? Everybody says, waste, fraud, and abuse.
And it's all there. It's all there.
But waste, fraud, and abuse isn't going to balance the budget. Okay, at the end of the day, there's going to have to be choices that have to be made. What is something that ought to be in the discussion of, maybe we're spending too much?
Well, we know we're spending too much because we're not balancing our budget, but we have more debt. The bottom line is it's in the eyes of the beholder. That's the problem that we have. 535 people said, wait a minute, what you're doing is wasteful, Chuck. I think you ought to cut that. And you're going to say, okay, Joe, how about yours?
But your spending that you think is mandatory, another person thinks is wasteful, right? Or abuse.
Yeah, and then just think, for every dollar, just break it down to the dollar. Mm-hmm. Is there any savings within that dollar you think that there's wasteful or abuse that we could at least have a target to set? Is it a penny? Is it 5 pennies? Is it a nickel? Where is it?
But here's what gets lost here is nobody will put anything on the table. Everybody says, we've got to cut spending. Well, what? And nobody wants to articulate
the process.
The what.
Chuck, you hit it dead on the head. The process isn't working. How come we're not held accountable to have the appropriation bills done at a certain time before the end of the fiscal year?
You tell me.
Well, that's what I
mean, what does Chuck Schumer say? What does Mitch McConnell say?
You know what happens? It rolls over into an omnibus bill at the end, and everything's thrown into it. Okay, here we got it, guys. That's it. Makes no sense.
So it sounds like you actually think the debt ceiling is a moment we should use to focus on.
Well, if you're going to use a debt ceiling for anything except for theatrics, okay, which is what probably might happen for a while, we're going to pass the debt ceiling. You are exactly correct.
Right.
It has to pass. We have the currency of good faith of the United States dollar and the currency of the world. You just can't let it default and basically hold us in jeopardy from where we stand in the world order. With that being said, is how do you get to it? Do you use this moment? Do you come to a responsibility? What are we paying for interest now? Mm-hmm. For 10 years, it was zero. It was funny money. We're not, it doesn't put any burden. Right. We're just raising debt, but we're not basically harming how we have to meet that debt through our interest payments. Now we're talking real money on an interest base. We're almost up to what our defense budget is, paying in interest.
I guess I come back to, and I don't think you have the answer either, which is, what is the moment to force this conversation?
This is a moment if Kevin McCarthy coming in new says, okay, it's serious, and he takes it from the standpoint, and he knows.
What does he need to do that you would take him seriously on this?
Well, Chuck.
You know what I mean by that? Like, how do you know when he's being serious, and how do you know when he's playing politics?
The bottom line is he has a heck of a political hand that's not very very good right now. He's not holding a lock, if you will, And he has 10 or 12 that's pretty much out there. He has to make a decision how he wants to govern and how he wants this next 2 years in this 118th Congress. You know, it was amazing. I just saw that the Ohio legislature, I don't know if you paid any attention to that.
Yeah.
The Ohio legislature, which is Republican controlled,
Yeah.
basically chose their new speaker, a Republican, with as many, if not more, votes from the Democrats because they wanted someone they can work with. That's a coalition. Why can't we put coalitions together here?
Well,
Some moderate centrist Democrats coming over and working whoever's the majority and saying you don't have to bow and kowtow to the extremes.
No, you don't have to worry about primaries. A lot of your colleagues have to worry about primaries. Isn't that why this doesn't happen?
I got to be honest with you, Chuck.
Yeah.
If it's all about the election, the next election, that's the worst thing can happen to us.
You just came from Davos.
Yep.
There's a moment, I don't know if you realize, that went viral between you and Senator Sinema. I want to show the moment here. I want to ask you about it. You guys are high-fiving. I think we'll show it again here. And I think it was right after she was talking about the filibuster.
Yeah.
Is that what you were high-fiving about?
Yeah, that was, I think, after that, and I saw her hand go up and I said, sure. Because here, the two of us are committed to protecting the filibuster, which I think protects checks and balances on the executive branch. So if you have a Democrat president, House and Senate, and you have a strong president, basically as leader of the party, then you don't have a check and balance because I guarantee you the House and Senate will roll to wherever the president wants. And I've said this before, I appreciate the Republican senators and under leadership of Senate minority leader at that time, McConnell, majority leader at that time, with Donald Trump every day beating on him, get rid of the filibuster. You got 53, 54 Republicans, and he would not. And I appreciate that. And I told Harry Reid we should not have done it when we did it in 2013. But to come back now, the checks and balances aren't there. It makes and forces us to work together. Think what we've accomplished in the 117th into the most divided Congress that we've ever had. And we did more substantial bills I think is going to be transformational.
You think those first 2 years of Biden and this Democratic Congress is going to be historic?
I think it's going to be transformational and historical, yes, because here you had bipartisan infrastructure bill we haven't done for years.
Yeah.
You had then on top of that the CHIPS Act, which will bring in manufacturing back so we don't have supply chains that we're dependent on that aren't loyal and trustworthy. And then we have the Inflation Reduction Act, which is going to give us, it's been misaligned because this administration basically said it's environmental. That bill's designed to be energy security, Chuck, and energy security is exactly what we need.
You're frustrated that the White House won't say the phrase energy security?
They will not use the word, and they haven't. I'm begging you all, please, energy security, we have to have fossil. We do it better and cleaner than anywhere in the world. And we can be energy secured for 10 years and also be able to invest in technology of the future.
Is this an agenda you can run for re-election on in West Virginia?
Most certainly, because we're seeing right now, I've got a battery plant coming in. I've got basically hydrogen coming in that direction. We've got expansion, and we're using our coal with carbon capture sequestration.
Yeah.
We've got basically methane capturing using gas. We have people that are fighting continuously, and you have to have the pipelines to move this product, and it's going to be needed. If not, you're going to end up like Europe. And that's what I didn't want to rub it into them, but Europe took an approach that they're going to say, we're going to have cap and trade, and we're going to have basically charging you carbon tax. I've said I'm not going to support that and vote for it because I think it doesn't work. So what I took the approach, and basically wrote this bill, was incentives. And it was working, and that's why they were all upset. That's why the chancellor and that's why presidents of other countries were very upset on this bill and concerned about it.
You run for office in 2024. You going to run as a Democrat?
Chuck, I haven't made a decision what I'm going to do in 2024. I've got 2 years ahead of me now to do the best I can for the state and for my country.
What's on the table? Is re-election on the table?
Everything's on the table.
Is running for governor on the table or no?
No, I've done that.
That you've ruled out?
I've done that. Yeah.
So everything on the table, there's basically only one other thing, the presidency. Is that something you would do outside the Democratic Party?
The only thing I can tell you is what I will do is whatever I can when I make my decision, what I think is the best that I can support and represent the people of West Virginia, but also be true to this country and the Constitution of this country.
That sounds like somebody that's looking for a way into national politics.
Well, every senator's on the national.
I understand that, but you know where I'm going.
I know where you're going, and the bottom line is
you're not telling me no.
I'm telling you that I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that when I make my decision, I make it based on what's best, what I think I can do to support and best for my country and my state.
Do you want President Biden to seek re-election?
He'll have to make that decision. I think that's a personal decision.
And you haven't decided if he does, you're not ready to support him?
I haven't decided on anything I'm going to do until I see what the lay of the land is going to be at that time, because this country needs to unite. We need to come back together. We're not coming together. and it needs to bring somebody that can bring this country together. I think he's done a good job in so many factions, in so many areas. I think there's a lot more to be done. I think he's been pulled to the left too far, and I think I've told him that. Yeah. I've been up front with that. That center is what the country wants. That's what the people want in America. They want us to work out of the center that, hey, just because you're on one side or the other, Republican ideas aren't always bad.
It is Monday, the 23rd of January of 2023, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. That's right, we made it to Monday, and oh, what another weekend it was. Yes, on the heels of, well, another mass shooting. And this time, down in the Southland, right in the heart of the Southland, I might say. And where is the Southland? Well, we're talking about Southern California, aren't we? Yes, the tragedy in Monterey Park during the Lunar New Year. And so as we're finding out more about it, speculation will arise. And I have my own. I do. And what is it? Well, when I found out, or we found out, that the shooter was Vietnamese of a certain age, a little bit older than we are. Well, maybe around our age, depending on who we are. Anyway, guys around 71. They call that elderly now. How dare they? And my experience is that he may have come over as a child on the boats. And so very possible that there was a little bit of animosity against ethnic Chinese, which is, I got to tell you, quite rampant among various Asian communities around the world. I just got to say. And put that together with Communist China's helping of North Vietnamese. Well, I just got to say that there's a lot of Vietnamese that came over on the boats and the airlifts too. But the boat children, the boat people, we called them back in the day, that's not supposed to necessarily be derisive. I think they meant it to be. But now I think it's almost quite a badge of honor, what it took to survive that. Now anybody who's a refugee, oh, you're scum of the earth. You're running from something? Save your lives. Anyway, they tended to skew a bit more conservative, and there would be little mini riots in various parts of the Southland, Orange County, beach communities, all over the place, between the more conservative elements of the South Vietnamese regulars, and then people who might be saying, well, Diem was corrupt. Oh, that would start a riot. I remember when the North Vietnamese flag was being flown in one of the beach communities, and there was a riot. Had to call the cops out, and the cops didn't know what to do. Well, why don't we just bash everybody's heads in? And they did. But anyway, I suspect that there had to have been something between, the Lunar New Year and the Tet Lunar New Year, shall we say. And this time it was offensive. It went a long ways to get there. But anyway, when they're looking for causes, well, like I said, we speculate, don't we? And I think that might be something to do with it. Let's just put it that way. All right. Tragedy all the way around. Okay. What else do we have in store for you other than Manchin putting his line in the sand? Yeah. I consider him high-fiving cinema in Davos as to be, I gotta say, probably not a good campaign look, to be honest with you. But let's go with it. you know. How does that play in West Virginia? Oh, Joe Manchin's working for us. Yeah, he sure is. All righty. A lot of people wonder how it is that individuals who endeavor into elected office come in with not very much money. You know, I mean, you still got to be, have some wherewithal. Not all of us can be George Santos. Look, there's something really deep and dark going on there, and I think it involves a hostile foreign power, but that's just me. But anyway, people often speculate how individuals can get into elected office with not very much in the ways of means, and then within a few short years be multi-millionaires, maybe a few times over on multi. And I'll just say anecdotally, I think it's because of money under the table. That's been what I saw. That's sort of what I saw. Okay. Yep. They don't call it lobbying for nothing. Here, let me lob you some money in the lobby. The reason they're called lobbyists is because people used to come and argue, their points in the lobby of some hotel in D.C. where the politicos would go. And so those who came in to advocate for clients or a cause or whatnot were called people of the lobby, lobbyists. So that's how we come up with lobbyists. I know you know that. Anyway, what else do we have in store for you since Manchin took up all that time? I just thought that it was Monday and we deserve to see what we're up against in terms of high-fiving cinema in Davos. And he thinks he's going to run as an independent. He didn't say that, but he's going to run as an independent. And, muck up everything because, hey, not all Republicans' ideas are wrong. That's exactly what the good German said back in the day. I'm just saying. All right, what else do we have in store for you today as we begin here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? The military is probing whether blood cancers are linked to nuclear silo work from decades ago. State lawmakers have proposed power grid protections after scores of domestic terror attacks. Of course, they don't call them that. It's only vandalism. And a subpoena has been granted in the Reno mayor's suit over who secretly installed a tracking device on her vehicle. This is Nevada, so hey. After the break, we move to the chef's table where the Justice Department charged two businessmen with trying to conceal a sanctioned Russian oligarch's ownership of a luxury yacht seized in Spain last year. Say that really fast. And the trial of a former leader of the Hells Angels in Europe for organized crime charges is set to start today in Madrid. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is our chat room link, and our chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly, for not only monitoring the chat room, but for help in the setup for, the new powerful machinery that is now powering Netroots Radio. Thank you. If those of you out there in radio listening land would look across the page, virtually, of course, at our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the left from the chat room link and down just a little is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, oh boy, does it help. If you could afford to spend, if you could afford to spend what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink and send those funds our way, that really helps us pay our bills and so much more. So thank you for your generosity. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter while you still can, do so at Netroots Radio. You can also follow us on Mastodon at netrootsradio.mstdn.plus. Mastodon Plus. I think it's a dot, but anyway, look for Netroots Radio at Mastodon Plus. There you go. Tom takes care of that and so much more, and thank you, Tom, for everything else and getting this radio station back up and running. If you would like to follow me on Twitter while we still can, you can do so at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes 10 minutes before showtime. And of course, you know that's where the actual articles are that we riff off of, because sometimes we riff off of them. Yes, we do. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, iTunes, YouTube, everywhere. Everywhere that podcasts can be found, you'll find us. All right. It's Monday, and let's get back into a little bit of order here because we have curated a show for you. And this first offering comes out of the Associated Press by Tara, or is it Tara, Kopp. 9 military officers who had worked decades ago at a nuclear missile base in Montana have been diagnosed with blood cancer. And there are indications the disease may be linked to their service, according to military briefing slides obtained by the Associated Press. One of the officers has died. All of the officers, known as missileers, were assigned as many as 25 years ago to Malmstrom Air Force Base, home to a vast field of 150 Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missile silos. The 9 officers were diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma, according to a January briefing by U.S. Space Force Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Seebeck. Space Force, God, I hate that. Missileers ride caged elevators deep underground into small operations bunkers encased in a thick wall of concrete and steel. They remain there sometimes for days, ready to turn the launch keys if ordered to by the president. There are indications of a possible association between cancer and missile combat crew service at Malmstrom Air Force Base, Seebeck said in slides presented to a Space Force unit this month. The disproportionate number of missileers presenting with cancer, specifically lymphoma, was concerning, he said. Now, Seebeck declined to comment when contacted by email by the AP on Saturday, saying the slides were pre-decisional. I love military speak. In the slides, he said the issue was important to the Space Force because as many as 455 former missileers are now serving as Space Force officers, including at least 4 of the 9 identified in the slides. In a statement to the AP, Air Force spokeswoman Ann Stefanik said that senior leaders are aware of the concerns raised about the possible association of cancer related to missile combat crews at Malmstrom Air Force Base. Stefanik added, "The information in this briefing has been shared with the Department of the Air Force Surgeon General, and our medical professionals are working to gather data to understand more." Anna Schronbaum of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. When gunshots at two electrical substations cut power to thousands of central North Carolina homes for several days in early December, Republican State Representative Ben Moss watched his vibrant district full of family farms, small businesses, and sprawling golf courses become a ghost town. After the latest attack last week on a substation in Randolph County, northeast of Charlotte, Moss is urging fellow lawmakers to prioritize new legislation that would secure the state's critical infrastructure when the legislative session begins in earnest this week. He's among the first state legislators to propose power grid protections this year amid a surge in attacks on U.S. substations, primarily in the Carolinas and Pacific Northwest. The recent attacks in Moore County, North Carolina, and others in Washington, Oregon, South Carolina, and Nevada have underscored the vulnerability of the nation's far-flung electrical grid, which security experts have long warned could be a target for domestic extremists. Could be? How about is? Lawmakers in at least two affected states, North and South Carolina, have begun proposing remedies. I don't want to see anybody else go through what Moore County did, said Moss, a 2024 candidate for state labor commissioner whose district saw a peak of more than 45,000 customers lose power. When the power goes out, you don't have heat, don't have food, can't get fuel or some medications, and people are unsafe. Moore is drafting legislation obtained in its preliminary form by the Associated Press that would require utilities to provide 24-hour security at substations, which transform high-voltage electricity into lower voltages that power communities. Security provisions would vary across sites, some of which are already gated with nearby cameras, while others are more exposed. He considers the bill a conversation opener between lawmakers, utilities, and security experts to help the General Assembly identify cost-effective defenses that would not drive up consumer prices. At the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A Nevada judge has granted subpoenas sought by Reno Mayor Hillary Sheev to force a private investigator to identify who hired his firm to secretly install a tracking device on her vehicle. Washoe County District Judge David Hardy approved the subpoenas on Friday to be served on David McNeely and his private investigation firm 5 Alpha Industries, the Reno Gazette-Journal reported. She filed a lawsuit against them last month after finding a GPS device attached to her vehicle that was capable of tracking its real-time location. The lawsuit alleges that the investigator trespassed onto her property to install the device without her consent. It says she was unaware she was being tracked until a mechanic noticed the device while working on her vehicle. A sophisticated GPS tracking device provided minute-by-minute updates for her location in continuous violation of her privacy, the suit said. The complaint says that the investigator was working on behalf of an unidentified third party whose identity she has not been able to ascertain. Sheev, who filed the lawsuit as a private person, was elected last month to her third term as mayor, a position she has held since 2014. She is seeking restitution for invasion of privacy, trespassing, civil conspiracy, and negligence, as well as attorney's cost. Judge Hardy said in his order that Sheev moves this court to issue subpoenas on David McNeely and 5 Alpha Industries LLC to obtain documents sufficient to identify the individual or entity who retained them to conduct surveillance on Ms. Sheev. Upon review, this court finds good cause to permit early discovery for the limited purpose of identifying the Doe defendants, he wrote. After the lawsuit was filed, 5 Alpha's website was taken down. McNeely has not responded to requests for comment, including a telephone message the AP left at his office on Saturday. Jane Suskind, a Reno lawyer listed in court documents as representing him, did not immediately respond to the AP's request for comment in phone and email messages on Saturday and Sunday. Sheev told the Gazette-Journal last month that learning of the tracking device had caused her severe stress. Well, I would consider if it had been a bomb, in this reporter's opinion. She continued, "This kind of invasion of privacy and stalking is incredibly alarming because I don't know what the intent is for this information," she said. "I mean, does someone want to kill me? I just don't know." Indeed. Well, let us now go to our break as we ponder that, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You're listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, Stealing Home. In 2018, writer-director-editor Hirokazu Koreeda's film Shoplifters won the coveted Palme d'Or Prize at the Cannes Film Festival, the first Japanese film to do so in 20 years. Now Broker, filmed in South Korea, in Korean, which Koreeda does not speak, with Korean actors, finds Koreeda-san playing with similar themes in a more accessible package. On a rainy night in Busan City, a young woman places her baby son at a church with a note saying she'll return. A church worker steals the baby so that he and his partner can sell it to couples who are unable to legally adopt. When the mother, unlike others, actually returns, the two brokers must take her to potential buyers, while the whole trio is secretly followed by 2 police detectives who are ready to shut down the operation. Now, if this were America, this movie would be a wacky, irreverent Buddy Road film. Instead, it's an almost slice-of-life drama about love and constructed families. Our pair of thieves, played by Gong Dong-won and Song Kang-ho from Snowpiercer and Parasite, are child traffickers, and yet they sincerely want to sell little Woo-sung to good parents. Lee Ji-eun plays a torn mother who wants the best for her son, whom she can neither fully embrace nor reject. With impressive understated performances, a peripatetic plot, and 2 especially moving standout scenes, Broker, like Shoplifters, see it if you haven't, looks at how loving groups, our human core, are attacked and fractured by traditions and laws, mediated and frustrated by organizations like churches, orphanages, and syndicates, all of it driven by the unending, unstoppable need to make money. Broker has the same feel as Shoplifters, but the driving threats are more immediate, the characters' goals clearer, and thus the stakes higher. Ultimately, though, both films are not about their great characters, but the forces that bedevil their struggles to construct families. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Karen Hopkin. Ever get the feeling that your cat is judging you? Well, you're in for a surprise, because it's actually your pooch who might be viewing you with a critical eye. That's according to a study that shows that dogs can assess human aptitude and will look toward people who seem to know what they're doing. The work appears in the journal Behavioral Processes.
Our aim was to test whether dogs are sensitive to humans' competence levels and whether they evaluate humans on this trait.
Hitomi Chijiwa is an assistant professor at Osaka University. If critiquing people's proficiency seems an odd job for a pup, it may not be all that far-fetched. Canines have spent more than 10,000 years by our sides.
So, dogs are highly sensitive to human behavior.
And they pay particular attention to things like how cooperative we are.
For example, our previous study showed that dogs avoid people who refuse to help their owner.
So Chijiwa and her colleagues got to wondering whether dogs might also rate us in terms of our skillfulness, particularly if those skills might come in handy for our four-footed little friends. So they set up a simple experiment.
We showed 60 dogs, 2 persons manipulating transparent containers. One person is competent.
That person was able to pop open the top after just a couple of twists.
Whereas the other person is incompetent and they failed at this task.
That person tried to open the lid and then gave up. The actors repeated the performance on a second container with the same results. The competent person succeeded, the other not so much. Then the researchers handed both actors a third container. In some trials, this container was empty. In others, it contained a treat. And what they found was that female dogs spent more time gazing expectantly at the person who had previously demonstrated container opening know-how.
And they were more likely to approach the competent person.
But only when they thought they might get free food.
Dogs in the empty condition showed no preferences.
Although one little cutie with a bow on her head did bark at all the containers, regardless of their contents. So, why would females be more censorious observers of people's performances than males?
Females' superiority in the social cognitive domain has been reported across many mammalian species, including humans.
In other words, in many cognitive studies, furry females seem to show a higher social IQ than mammalian males. And sex differences have been seen in other pup studies.
For example, females looked at their owners more frequently and for longer than males when facing unsolvable tasks. And female dogs solved significantly more tasks than males in social learning tasks.
So, next time Fifi looks at you with those puppy dog eyes, you might be thinking, what a good dog. But she might be thinking, you could do better. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Karen Hopkin.
This is the story of a very special woman. In a matter of seconds, she turned herself into a great mathematician or an entrepreneur. Her knowledge was limitless and still is. She could also make monsters disappear, especially those that lurked in the shadows under the bed. Once, this woman put back together a teenage girl's broken heart, which had been shattered in 1,000 pieces, just by giving her a bear hug. She masqueraded as a regular person at work, but as a superhero at home. Everyone knows her as Gabriella. I still call her Mom.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
I don't usually cover sob stories, but this one is so touching it might make you cry or throw up. It's about some workers who toiled all last year in the caverns of New York City, only to find years in that their pay was being cut by up to 50%. Actually, it's not their salaries that were cut, but their bonuses. You see, these are Wall Street investment bankers whose annual salaries total only a few $100,000 each, poor babies. But they always expect to double or triple that in bonus money. After all, theirs is a dirty job. They engineer multi-billion-dollar corporate mergers that increase monopoly power, eliminate the jobs of thousands of regular workers, and further enrich the super-rich. It's devilish work, hence the big bonus payouts to keep them doing it. Last year, though, the number of whopper deals plummeted. The revenues of Wall Street investment banks sank, and oh, how sad it was to hear the wails of so many poor Wall Street millionaires whose bonuses were whacked. See, I told you it was a sob story. But worse than the loss of money for these hard-hit financial toilers is the tragic crimping of their lifestyle. The New York Times reports, for example, that Wall Street's bonus bust has already resulted in fewer of these deal makers buying $100,000 luxury cars this year. Can you imagine the pain of that? The dinging of annual bonuses is even stirring radical sentiments among these restive rich workers. In one survey of financial professionals, 72% said they would consider quitting if their bank cut their bonus. This is Jim Hightower saying, now there's an enticing new source of labor activism for unions that are organizing at Starbucks, Amazon, McDonald's, etc. Why not a Wall Street banker union? Solidarity forever, brothers and sisters.
If you'd like more of Jim Hightower's real populism, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter gives you the real lowdown on which corporations, by name, are doing what to the middle class, our environment, and our democracy. Each month, the Hightower Lowdown brings you facts you didn't know, along with actions you can take to fight back. It also comes with a sense of humor. Hightower believes we can fight the gods and still have fun. Plus, get this, it's cheap. Only $15 brings you 12 issues a year. For real populism, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
In 2023, can abortion still be considered a constitutional right? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. As you know, the Supreme Court in 2022 in Dobbs overruled Roe v. Wade and erased reproductive choice as a federal constitutional right. But the United States Constitution is not the only constitution that matters. Every state has a constitution, and state constitutional rights can be broader than the federal, as was demonstrated in early January 2023 when the Supreme Court of South Carolina, 3-2, ruled that the state constitutional guarantee of a right to privacy includes a woman's right to choose. That decision struck down a state law that prohibited abortion after generally 6 weeks. Sadly, at the same time, the Idaho Supreme Court, also 3-2, ruled that under that state's constitution, abortion is not a fundamental right. The Idaho court upheld a state law that bans practically all abortions. One difference, South Carolina's constitution has a specific right to privacy. Idaho's doesn't. While the South Carolina decision shows that states can protect fundamental rights even when the Supreme Court won't, the Idaho decision demonstrates that state court decisions can come out very differently, and that fundamental rights or not can depend on the state in which you live. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1936. That was the day when 20 laborers who were part of the Civilian Conservation Corps got involved in a type of labor they probably never expected. The Civilian Conservation Corps was a program established by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt to get young men back to work during the Great Depression. The program employed men ages 18 to 26 to complete public works projects across the nation. CCC crews planted nearly 3 billion trees, constructed 470 fire towers, built 97,000 miles of fire roads, and constructed facilities at 800 parks across the nation. But snowy weather had ground work to a halt in Allegheny County, Maryland. The men of Company 324 were at the 15-Mile Creek camp waiting for the weather to clear. That's when they received a distress call. A woman was trapped due to the snow. She was in labor, but the 3-mile-long access road where she lived was impassable. Even worse, the state's snowplows were busy digging out other roads. The men of the CCC answered the call. 20 volunteers shoveled the snow by hand, working well into the night so the trapped woman could make it to the hospital to deliver her baby. In total, 30,000 young men working in 200-man crews participated in the CCC in Maryland from 1933 to 1942. Due to its proximity to Washington, D.C., the state was designated the first Corps area. The CCC men helped to build campgrounds, pavilions, and hiking and skiing trails that greatly enhanced the recreation landscape of that state. But for one woman, they were remembered for helping her when she needed it most, during the birth of her child on a snowy day in January. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 28 degrees Fahrenheit under very foggy conditions, which will give way to some clouds later on this morning and generally sunny skies for the mid to late afternoon. Highs near 50. We'll see about that. Winds light and variable. Mostly clear overnight. Lows around 30. Winds light and variable. And then abundant sunshine tomorrow. Highs in the low 50s. Winds light and variable. I should add that there is a forecast of snow for the weekend and continuing on into next week. But it's only Monday. That is subject to change after all, isn't it? Pollen is still rated none right here in Rogue River itself, and the air quality index for the region is in the good range at 20 parts per million. And the daytime UV index is low at level 2. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.47 inches. Visibility is down to a half mile, and relative humidity is at 100%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 39 degrees and partly cloudy. Paris is 38 and cloudy. Rome is 46 and fair with a possible disruption due to wind. Kyiv is 29 and cloudy. Kabul is 15 degrees and clear. Hong Kong is 64 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 40 and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 67 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 50 degrees sunny with a wind advisory. And New York is 39 degrees Fahrenheit with rain and a small craft advisory due to heavy wind. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Staff at the Associated Press, and who can blame them, bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. 2 businessmen have been charged with trying to conceal a sanctioned Russian oligarch's ownership of a luxury yacht seized in Spain last year by the U.S. government, the Justice Department said. An arrest warrant has been issued for Vladislav Ozapov, a dual Russian and Swiss national, who the Justice Department says was an employee of Viktor Veckelsberg, a billionaire Russian oligarch and ally of Vladimir Putin. Another defendant, Richard Masters, was arrested by Spain at the request of U.S. authorities. He is a British businessman who ran a yacht management company in Palm de Mallorca, Spain, where Veckelsberg's yacht Tango was seized last April. The Justice Department says the men worked together to hide Veckelsberg's ownership of the yacht from the U.S. government, even developing a fake name for the vessel as a way to evade sanctions and to illegally collect hundreds of thousands of dollars in U.S. services and financial transactions.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Jennifer O'Mahony of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The trial of a former leader of the Hells Angels in Europe began today in Madrid. German national Frank Hannebuth is being tried alongside 49 international collaborators for running a chapter of the motorcycle club on the Spanish resort island of Mallorca that was allegedly involved in organized crime. During the first brief hearing, the court read out the charges to each of the 46 defendants present in the room and ensured all understood the text. A German-language interpreter translated the charges for 3 German nationals who were taking part by video conference. The beginning of the session was delayed for 4 hours as some of the lawyers tried to arrange plea agreements for the defendants. It was not immediately clear if Hannebuth's lawyer was one of them. Spanish prosecutors are seeking a 13-year prison sentence for Hannebuth on charges of membership in a criminal organization, money laundering, and illegal possession of firearms. They are demanding a $4.5 million fine for the money laundering charge. Other alleged leading members are also charged with running a prostitution ring and drug trafficking, and face up to 38 years in prison. They sound like bikers. According to the prosecutor's indictment, the Hells Angels conducted illegal activities in Mallorca from 2009 to 2013 under Hannebuth's leadership, who I'm sure is named Vinzig. back home in Germany. He allegedly appointed members who then carried out crimes including extortion, pimping, acquiring illegal firearms, and robbery in popular tourist spots. They also moved into real estate on Mallorca and the nearby island Ibiza. The accused did not limit themselves to riding Harleys. One of Hannibus' fellow defendants has been cited by driving a Bentley at 125 miles per hour in a 75 mile per hour zone before being pulled over by the cops. Well. That brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.